So whether or not you're filed for disability or successfully gone to 100% or any percentage rating, we actually have increases every year, year over year. So let's talk about 2026 and what to expect. Now, I would say in general, fortunately, there is a pay increase that is a COLA amount that goes up every year from the VA. And just like you were in the military before, every year you do make a small amount of increase. The VA does the same thing. Does this percentage really match the inflation or what's happening in the world? I mean, that's a whole different story and different topic in general. But let's actually talk through what the COLA amount increase is, how the VA determines it, and we're actually going to look at some numbers for 2026 that should be coming out. So COLA stands for Cost of Living Adjustment, and this is in order for the VA's money or your money to actually stay with inflation. So the dollar amount, the lifestyle of making 100% PNT, and how you can live off of that continues to be the same or similar to what it is when you first get it, and the same as when you're 50 years old or 50 years later in your life if you live that long getting the disability paychecks. Each year in the United States, the Social Security Administration calculates COLA. They do this by calculating the Consumer Price Index for urban earners. And I'm not going to go into exactly what that means and how the big government does this in the United States, but long story short, the VA adopts the exact same process for having to calculate COLA increase. So here's how this calculation works using the CPIW. They compare the current year's third quarter with the previous year. If there is an increase using this metric, then they will increase the COLA to that percentage. And so we cannot say what has been approved for 2026. We do know that if you're in the third quarter, they're going to be measuring this out. And what has happened this year is we're looking at a 2.6% increase in COLA because we can determine that is most likely where they're at based on just that simple calculation, which I have simplified. I'm not an expert in this area, but that is why people have started to talk about this online saying, what's the 2026 COLA going to look like? What's the increase going to look like for disability? And before we jump into the real numbers for 2026, I found an article that shows the breakdown. How does this COLA make a difference? What does it really mean? So the factors that influence this are a lot to do with everything that is going on in the world. It's not very simple. It is based on administration and laws that are in effect. It is based on economics. It is based on trade. There's a lot that goes into this. And although COLA is not guaranteed, historic trends say that there is a way that they do measure it that is accurate to hopefully go with inflation, which again, if you're like me living in the United States, things don't seem very cheap. Is this COLA of 2% or 2.6% really going to be that impactful to live the same lifestyle? Hard to say. But economists anticipate a steady inflation rate, and that steady inflation rate is 2.6 to be probably a little bit more on the moderate or conservative side. Although given everything is really expensive, this might not really be enough when it comes to your compensation. So let's get into the numbers. So I found this article by the Veteran Claims Insider, and they kind of put this out to show the basic math. The table of contents they have there is kind of describing what I talked about with the CPIW data, and they kind of just do a quick breakdown on the numbers. So if you're looking at 2026 estimated with 2.6% increases for VA disability without children. So if you're by yourself without kids, that's where I'm at. I'm at the far left end of the spectrum here on the chart. But we're looking at 100% PNT veteran alone at $3,930.91 is what they are projecting. That's if you're alone. Obviously, this goes up if you have a spouse to $4,150.07. Spouse with parents, spouse with two parents, so on and so forth. Now, the areas where things don't increase, and I don't really know why this is the case, and I don't really agree with it, is if you're at a 10 and 20% rating, there's really no increase happening. So those numbers typically stay the same. I can't determine if those are ever going to be changed, but if you're at the 10% rating, I have not seen that increase. 30% to 100 is where these COLA increases are actually in effect. And of course, we can talk about the numbers with children. So if you have a little bit larger of a family, if you're the veteran with one child, you're looking at $4,077.48. all the way up to having a few children and parents, right? So on and so forth. You can see this chart. I'll link it below as well, so you can just read the whole thing. I will also say though, because 10 and 20% does not go up with COLA increases, special monthly compensation actually does as well. So keep that in mind. If you're at the special monthly compensation mark outside of just 100% PNT, that also will go up in an increase on a percentage basis. And those percentages with larger numbers, obviously, if you're talking about basic math, might make a bigger difference for you than if you're at a lower percent or if you're at a lower overall amount of money that you have coming in. So COLA increases are good for us, even if it's not exactly a huge fundamental difference amount from the year before. Every little penny matters when you are living off this amount of money. If you have to live off of this amount of money fully, I hope that these COLA increases go up more year over year instead of staying at the lower percentage, but we cannot guarantee that. But the thing that you can do is learn to manage your money. I made a video, I'm going to put it up here, where I talked about how to live off of your investments from VA disability, especially if you do not have a job. But those basic principles from personal finance that I have a personal passion in are really, really informative. I suggest you watch that video next, just so you have an idea of how you can live off of your money. Because what most people do is when they have an increase in money, they have a lifestyle inflation as well. And even a small amount could do it. So if you say, well, I have an extra $100 every month, so I'm going to just kind of burn the $100. I'm going to go out more. You're not really going to be saving money. And if you're already struggling to utilize this money because you can't work, you're at 100% P&T, you're unable to work, I suggest reevaluating how COLA is treated and learning what personal finance goals you might have to be successful. At the end of the day, despite what anybody thinks about this compensation, it could at some point not be around. And I don't think that is the case. That could potentially be just a bigger collapse in the US economy than we've ever seen for something like that to happen. But you never know what can happen. So it's always best to learn how to use your money successfully for yourself long term in case you have life changes, in case your own lifestyle changes outside of a COLA increase. Because a COLA increase might be a lot to you or might not really count much for you. But at the end of the day, you can learn a little bit more on what to do with your money to be successful as a civilian, being outside of the military, and going through the ups and downs that we all have. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to learn more about this topic, watch the next one.